Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Senator Lindsey Graham's virtual town hall meeting, broadcasting live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. My name is T.W. Riggi, Communications Director for Team Graham, and we're very, very excited to have you here this evening. As you know, there is so much going on across the state of South Carolina and across our nation, not only with the coronavirus, but a number of issues both of national importance and global importance. And Senator Graham is very excited to answer those questions for you this evening. Please, if you could, just take a moment, and if you have a question, comment, or concern for Senator Graham, please leave it in the replies or the comment section below, and we will do our level best to answer every single one of them. Please also include where you're from, so that Senator Graham has an idea of where in the state you're contacting us and watching from this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Senator Graham.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, TW. I appreciate that very much. So I just got back from a briefing with the governor. I listened to his task force talk about reopening hotels and restaurants and hospitality industry, and I'm hoping we can do that sometime in May. Sooner rather than later, but do it safely. I think the governor's done a good job. He's had the right balance, sort of a Goldilocks approach, not too hot, not too cold. Better days ahead to all those who have lost loved ones. Our heart breaks for you. There are over 200 South Carolinians have passed away. About 5,000 people have been infected. But I think the governor's done a good job of leading us, but most importantly, the people of South Carolina have done a good job of following the guidelines, social distancing, and the payoff is coming. We'll be able to slowly but surely go back to work, and hopefully by the fall, we'll be much better prepared. There'll be vaccines on the horizon and drug therapies that lessen the effect of the virus on the human body. Today was a pretty optimistic day on the drug therapy side. I can't say it. You know the drug I'm talking about, Rivenavir, something like that. Bottom line is Dr. Fauci indicated they had some successful trials with that drug, lessening the effect on the human body. When we take this thing down from a 10 to a 1 or 2, people will feel good about going out and about. The social distancing has worked. We're going back to the Senate Monday. Looking forward to that. We'll do that safely. We've got a lot to deal with. There's talk of phase 4. We'll see how that works out. I want to make sure that phase 3 works. We've had a lot of success with the Paycheck Protection Program. We've had some problems with it, but anytime you do something that large, that quick, you're going to have problems. But I hear from small businesses all over the state how this program is saving them from bankruptcy. If there's a round 3, it needs to be smaller in terms of dollars and more focused on Main Street. I think the goal in round 3 will put the dollars to the mom and pop shops that don't have a lot of liquidity and keep them from going bankrupt as much as possible. Mitch McConnell mentioned something today that I completely agree with, and that's liability protection for businesses who go back to work and welcome the public in their establishments. You know, we don't sue each other for the flu. There's a lot of concerns today expressed at the governor's meeting from business owners about liability they may have if somebody comes in and sues them for getting the virus, or how you deal with the employee-employer relationship. I think it's important that we open up businesses, that the businesses follow the protocols, but that we have liability protection so America can get back to normal as soon as possible. Heard again today the problem with the unemployment compensation package we passed. I've always been supportive of making you whole. If you lose your job, no fault of your own, your business had to shut down because of mitigation, protecting the public from the spread of the virus. So the goal was to make sure you get your actual wages. Unfortunately, in this bill, we have a $600 federal benefit added to the state unemployment benefit, and that's created a $23 an hour wage for unemployment in South Carolina. There are a lot of businesses in the hospitality industry and restaurants and hotels in particular that pay $15, $17, $18 an hour. And you want to make sure people are made 100% whole, but they don't get a pay raise in unemployment because that will skew the economy. For us to get back to business, we're going to have to get our employees back into the workforce. and we need to fix this aberration in the unemployment benefit law that actually pays people more not to work than work. So that's a must-do for us. I learned a lot the last couple of weeks here at home. The medical supply chain that we talk a lot about being in China, we got to fix that. Here's the good news. I talked to Milliken today. They're one of the great textile manufacturers left in the world. And they're putting a bid in through FEMA to manufacture medical gowns. They're competing against Vietnam, believe it or not. So I'm going to do everything I can to help Milliken get into the medical supply business. We've got a lot of textile entities that can do that. And we actually manufacture pharmaceuticals here. About 90% of the compounding ingredients that go into antibiotics are in China. So the goal is to bring the medical supply chain back in the United States. And I think South Carolina can benefit maybe better than any single state from that event, because we have very sophisticated manufacturing on the textile side and on the pharmaceutical side. Holding China accountable is important. This is the second or third pandemic to come out of China. I'll be introducing legislation next week that will put sanctions on China. It will restrict travel into the United States by Chinese students and others that benefit from our universities. We'll freeze some assets of the Chinese Communist Party leaders who lied to the world about the virus, and we'll close down American financial institutions to state-run businesses in China. And trust me, that will affect them. The goal is to get them to do three things: cooperate with investigations regarding the virus. Right now, they're not allowing us in the lab, and that's unacceptable. Not just the United States, but the world needs to know what happened in China and how this all came out of China. The second is to close these wet markets where you bring exotic wildlife like monkeys and bats into the market for human consumption. And again, that's how these pandemics start. I don't know if there was an accident in the lab, but we do believe it was eventually spread through a wet market. Time will tell about that. The third thing that's important to me, all of us who believe in freedom and like it for ourselves, Hong Kong democracy advocates have been jailed in large numbers during this coronavirus pandemic. As we're focusing on the coronavirus, the Chinese Communist Party is breaking the deal that they had with Hong Kong to allow it to stay democratic island. And bottom line is they're putting people in jail for demanding their rights and for honoring agreements that the Chinese signed with the British. And I want to champion their cause. So three things: cooperate with the investigation, close the wet markets, and let people out of jail who are demanding their democratic rights in Hong Kong. I hope I can get democratic support for that. Better days ahead. Therapies and vaccines are the key to getting back to a normal life. And I see great progress on that front. To all those who have lost life and their families, I'm very sorry, and it's been tough. A lot of people are nervous and worried. I get that. And we're just all in it together, and we're going to begin to open up the economy, but we're going to do it in a smart way. So with that, I'll take questions, and thank you for participating. Susan, essential workers still have to go to work. The House of Representatives refused to return. Can we fire them all? Yeah, in November. That's the way it works. When you think about it, you can fire anybody you don't like. In politics, you can't do that in China. There are a lot of places in the world you can't do that. I don't know what the House's deal is. I want to be safe. I don't want to put people at risk, but I feel like we can go back safely in the Senate Monday, and I intend to do that. We need to deal with the liability issues about reopening America. I just talked to the Clemson athletic director. They're, hoping we can have football in the fall, but they're worried about getting sued. And we got to deal with issues like that, because if we don't, the economy won't restart. But if you don't like what a politician's doing in America, you can fire them at the ballot box. And I can't wait to have this election in November. I think you're right. The House should be back in session. Derek, why are you appointing judges? Shouldn't you stop until after the next election? Absolutely not. President Trump won the election fair and square. We're filling vacancies that were left open by President Obama, and some vacancies have occurred to people retiring. That's part of the Judiciary Committee's job. I intend to work with Democrats to find ways to deal with phase 4, if there's a phase 4, about how to provide money to state and local governments for legitimate coronavirus-related expenses, not bailing them out of unrelated problems. But we're going to go back to business in the Judiciary Committee. And one of the jobs of the Judiciary Committee is to confirm judges. And I guarantee you, if the Democrats were in the White House, they'd be doing the same thing. So we'll be going back to confirming judges when I get back. Daniel, will the U.S. impose sanctions over China under the COVID-19 virus? I hope so. I'm going to give the Senate a chance. You know, to my Democratic colleagues, you've taken issue with President Trump. That's part of the game here. But you need to speak up more against China. This happened in China. It wasn't President Trump's fault. The Chinese Communist Party withheld information from the world about the virus. They protected their own people and allowed travel out of China, and the rest is history. I think they need to be sanctioned until they cooperate with the world how the virus started, until they close down the wet markets, which are pandemic incubators, and we need to call them out on their breach of the agreement with Hong Kong. So I am hoping we have a vote pretty early when we get back, not soon after we get back, to send a signal to China, because if we don't hold them accountable now, this will never stop. From Twitter, how does holding China accountable help us now? Well, I think what it will do now is give us insight into where the virus came from and some of the methodologies behind the virus that we don't have today. The more we can know about where it started and how it started, the better off we'll be now. The wet markets are pandemics in the making. They need to be shut down now. And putting people in jail for demonstrating for democracy, something given to Hong Kong, signed into law by the Chinese government, which they're reneging on, needs to be done now. When it comes to dealing with China, now is the time. Really, the time should have been the last pandemic. So we can do two things at the same time. We can repair the damage to our economy and have all hands on deck approach to therapies and drug vaccines and safely reopen our economy and go after China. I want to do both now. Brian, where are the stimulus checks? I haven't gotten one yet. Sorry, Brian, give us some information. We'll try to help you there. Billions have gone out the door. If you had an IRS account, if you'd paid taxes in the past, or direct deposit account, it should have went into your account. If you make $75,000 or less in income, you're entitled to $1,200, $2,400 for a couple, $500 for minor children, $3,400 for a family of four. I'm sorry you haven't got the check, but let's look at it this way. We spent $2.3 trillion in 5 days. We've never had a situation where everybody shut their business down at the same time and went to the bank to apply for a loan at the same time. So the PPP program has had problems, understandable, and we're getting a better handle on it. And we're trying to send literally a $1,200 check to every American who makes under $75,000. I'm sorry you haven't gotten it yet. We'll help you where we can, but a substantial amount of the money has been out the door. Werner from Facebook. Lindsey, marry me. Appreciate that. You can do better, and I've never met you. Okay, Brian, you're a punk. Okay, a lot of people agree with that too. Maybe you and Verna can have a cup of coffee and work out your differences. Wanda, don't forget about the communities hit by tornadoes. Not everything about the coronavirus. You're dead right. I live in Seneca. And the one thing I can tell you, these alerts work. About 3 o'clock in the morning, my flip phone, which is very reliable, went off saying tornado warning, and it hit a neighborhood right above me. I think 9 people were killed in South Carolina. I visited the damaged sites a couple of times. The governor's declared a disaster, made a disaster declaration for the communities hit by the tornado. A lot of people in Seneca, like 70 homes were completely destroyed, and I'm sure it's even worse downstate where more people died. I haven't forgotten, got neighbors that lost everything. So thank you for bringing up the tornado. There is a The Red Cross has been terrific. The United Way has been terrific. If you got any extra money out there, give some money to the United Way and the Red Cross have been helping tornado victims. Okay, Robbie, what are the plans to deal with the deficit since we're spending so much? Good question. Well, we're going to run up the deficit numbers unimaginable, but in World War II, we put winning the war ahead of the debt. And if I could think of ways to avoid spending this much money, I would have. But we've literally shut the country down. We're trying to avoid people from going bankrupt, and small businesses particularly giving loans that will be paid back with a $1,200 check to everybody making under $75,000, keeps the light on, put food in the refrigerator. The way to deal with the debts, we're going to have to control spending in the future, but about 2/3 of the federal debt is driven by the unfunded liabilities of Medicare, Social Security, other entitlement programs like Medicaid. If you get to be 65, you're eligible for Medicare. Somebody in my income level probably needs to pay more into Medicare and take a little less out. Social Security is, I'll be able to receive Social Security when I'm 66 in 2 months. I'm willing to take less benefits because people need it more than I do. When I was 21, my mom died. When I was 22, my dad died. We lost our business. My aunt and uncle took my sister and myself in. I was going to college at the time. She received $300, I think something around $300 a month, survivor benefits. My sister did because she was a minor, and that really helped. I'm in a spot now. I don't have kids. I'm doing well financially. I could afford to take a little less than I would. When it comes to Medicare, I'm willing to pay more into the system to give it some life. And younger people are going to have to work a little bit longer because we live so much longer. The Simpson-Bowles, Ronald Reagan, Tip O'Neill model of entitlement reform is the only way to get out of debt. And if we need to increase taxes to get Democrats on board to do that, I'm willing within reason to make that deal, but I'm not going to increase taxes unless we reform entitlements, because that won't get you out of the debt by itself, increasing taxes. Okay, Missy, please stop mail-in voting. One thing I am going to do, Missy, is oppose any effort by the federal government to take over the voting systems of each state. We have absentee ballots in South Carolina for a good reason. You can vote absentee, but I don't like the idea of mass mail-in voting. I believe it's right, subject to fraud, and we're going to let each state make that decision, and Democrats are going to want to mandate mail-in voting as part of the next package, and I think that would be a bad idea for the country and our electoral integrity. Amy, is Biden and his son going to get a free pass? Will anything happen to them? Ron Johnson's looking at all things associated with Ukraine. Here's the question. Joe Biden was put in charge of the Ukraine portfolio in terms of cleaning up corruption. Ukraine was a very corrupt country. Oil and gas business is one of the dominant industries. And what have we found out? We found out that shortly after being given that task of cleaning up the Ukraine, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, became a board member of Burisma, one of the largest gas companies in the Ukraine, making millions of dollars. And I think that's fair game to be looked at. And whether or not there's criminality, I don't know, but I think we need to have an accounting. I guarantee if Mike Pence's son had done this, the media would be all over that issue. So yes, Congress will be looking at this, and there's something for the voters to consider, if nothing else. Charlie, what is your opinion on how the presidential election is faring? Charlie, I think the election is going to come down to a couple of things. If in October, the economy is coming back and we have drug therapies in place that are reducing the effect of the virus on the human body and a vaccine is on the horizon, I think President Trump is in a good position to get reelected. You got to remember, before the virus, we had one of the strongest economies in the history of the country. We'd rebuilt a military that was broken. And Joe Biden's time in office during the Obama years, I think, were very tough for the military. We reduced our military capability. They made decisions to allow ISIS to rise from the ashes of Iraq. And they did a deal with the Iranians that I thought enriched the Ayatollah, not the people of Iran, and did very little to stop their nuclear ambitions. So we're going to have a compare-contrast election, but I think one of the dominant issues is going to be how well did President Trump do with the coronavirus. And I think, generally speaking, he's made a lot of good decisions. Shutting down travel from China in January was a good decision. March 13th, we imposed the guidelines that stopped the spread of the virus. And I really do believe that if we had done nothing and let it burn out, we'd have 1 million plus dead Americans now. We're at almost 60,000, shutting the entire economy down along with the rest of the world. Can you imagine if we had done nothing? So I think the president made some good calls under difficult circumstances. And in November, the people can decide. And I feel pretty good about his chances. I really do. Twitter, username ZU. What are you watching on TV during quarantine? Okay, well, down here, I don't get MeTV, but I do in Washington, so I always watch Gomer Pyle, Hogan's Heroes, and Andy Griffin, but it doesn't come on here. So I've been like Netflix. I saw The Crown. It was really, really good. So I'm just flipping around. The Last Dance is awesome. You got to watch that. It'll be on this Sunday. It's about the last year of Michael Jordan with the Bulls. It's like really, really good. And so I'm watching anything that keeps me awake. Zeb, report on Fox Carolina said South Carolina got an F in social distancing. Who gave the grade? South Carolina. I think the numbers speak for themselves. We're controlling the spread of the virus. We're not out of the woods yet. I think you may be talking about some New York Times article of tracking cell phones, but from what I can tell, I've been in the home since this thing started, basically, and you go to the grocery stores, people taking it very seriously. The streets are empty, and from what I can tell, people have done a darn good job. So I don't know who gave the grade, but I give them an F, whoever you are. Mr. Silvers, what role is digital playing in your campaign? I don't know if there really is a Mr. Silver or we just made this up ourselves, but apparently there's. Mr. Silver, God bless you. We're going fully digital now. It's hard to get out and shake hands when you can't. And we've got a digital platform that I'm proud of. We're raising a lot of money. My opponent's raising a lot of money, but we're fully digital. If you want to help, go on to our websites, and we'll be glad to receive a donation. And if you can give, we would be honored. But what am I doing for the campaign? I'm doing as much interaction as I can. I'm going to call all of my precinct chairmen and captains and thank them. We've got a very viable campaign, and I am doing a lot of reaching out to people, Republican primary voters on the campaign side, but doing this tonight, just try to stay in touch with the public. There's a lot of hunger for information out there, and I've really enjoyed working with Tim Scott, Senator Scott. We've gotten to know each other. I knew him well, but I just really admire him. He's so smart, kind and compassionate, and so this has been a hell of an experience for all of us, but I've learned a lot about technology, and I think the benefits are endless. Brian, you're a loser. Thank you very much. A lot of people would agree with that, but enough about my family. Thank you. Mary, what about a balanced budget amendment? Couldn't agree with you more. A lot of states have balanced budget amendments, and they're in a world of hurt. But I've been for it ever since I've been in politics. And what would it make us do? It would make us, without a balanced budget amendment, we got a million excuses why we can't do things. It'd make us get in a room, deal with entitlement reform, restructuring the tax code. It would help America a lot if there was a requirement by Congress to balance the budget. I'm for it, but I don't think it'll pass, but let's vote on it. Andrew, thanks for your efforts. Please don't forget farmers. Andrew, the last guy in America will forget a farmer is me because I love eating. And I have learned from our Secretary of Agriculture here at home, and just talking to farmers on the phone, how important they are to the food supply. We have the most abundant, affordable, and safe food supply in the world. It is a bit in jeopardy on the pork, poultry processing side, outbreaks in these plants, but from the grocery store clerk who puts this up to the checkout clerk, thank you on that end of the food chain. But without the farmer, there's nothing to put on the shelves. So as you go to bed tonight, don't forget the farmers. I promise you I won't. It's hard work being a farmer. Becca, is the last stimulus check people will receive? Probably. We're almost at $3 trillion now. The stimulus I'm looking for is a reopened economy with employment opportunities. You're seeing South Carolina begin to reopen. People are coming back into the workforce. The real stimulus that's going to change the trajectory that we're on is going to be the economy, not government checks. So I doubt if there'll be another payment. Hopefully in the coming weeks here, the economy will begin to reopen and people will get back to their livelihoods. Okay, Don, can anything be done to get Pelosi out of office, like impeachment? We're not going to impeach Nancy Pelosi. What did I learn? You know, everybody wanted to repeal Obamacare. I got that. But I did learn it's hard to repeal a law named after a president while they're still president. I doubt if we'll impeach Nancy Pelosi as long as she's Speaker of the House. I've been very disappointed in the rhetoric coming from her toward President Trump. She's never mentioned China that I know of, but lays everything at President Trump's feet. And I doubt if we'll beat her in her home district, but I'm hoping and praying we can take the House back. And I think we have a good chance of doing that. Thanks, Don. Dee, why aren't you being investigated for treason? I just think they're too busy. Why is food being wasted due to decreased demand? What can be done? That's a really good question. You know, there's going to be euthanasia of a bunch of pigs and chickens here soon because the processing plants are shut down. So one thing does affect another. And I guess the honest answer, there's real no script for this, Angela. We've never had to deal with this, I guess, since 1917. What is the right answer when you have to shut the entire economy down virtually to keep people alive? How do you spend $2.3 trillion smartly when you have 5 days to do it? We're beginning to adjust the problems in the stimulus package. We're trying to fix the unemployment aberration, trying to get checks out the door. We're trying to retool the food supply. But I look at the glass half full. I think America's done a pretty damn good job given the hand we've been dealt. I'm a small business owner and awaiting word about my PPP loan. What are you doing to help little guys like me? Round two was designed for you. Another $300 billion, but more money focused on community banks and credit unions, probably where you do banking. Is that Margaret? One of the concerns about round one of the PPP program is that the bigger banks got a big slice of the pie, and the more sophisticated small business owners were able to get money. And, you know, like the Lakers, I wouldn't consider them small business. So we did better this time. There'll probably be a round three, Margaret, and that will be, I promise you, focused to Main Street. But if you have a problem getting a bank to help you, you can go to sba.gov, put in your zip code, and it will tell you the banks in your zip code area that you can use. And if you're waiting on word that the program is up and running, the system collapsed today, but hopefully it will get rebuilt soon. So just hang in there. If your application is in, I'm hoping you find some good news soon. Are you involved with Accelerate South Carolina? Yes. What can we do to get our economy going again? I had a meeting today with the governor along with Senator Scott. They had a roundtable with the Accelerate South Carolina group. This was about tourism, restaurants, hotels. Spent a couple hours today with the governor. We're trying to find out when can we start going back to restaurants. I think that'll be happening pretty soon. We got to do it slowly, cautiously. We can't overcrowd places, but you see more retail outlets opening, and I think you're going to see the restaurants begin to open up with a reduced capacity here pretty soon. So I've been very involved with the governor, so has Senator Scott, and I think we've created a good team relationship here. I think Henry has done a good job as governor, and we talk constantly, but I was literally in Columbia today, where I am right now, quite frankly, talking with Accelerate South Carolina folks, and I'm encouraged about where we're headed. When will garbage stop being added to stimulus bills? Oh, sorry, my people can't write. We're going to have a problem with phase 4. They're going to want to put voting by mail in it. They're going to put the Green New Deal in it. We're not going to let that happen. I want it to be focused on the needs of the United States regarding the coronavirus. And this is what happens when you have divided government. You got to deal with the other side. But I think this last episode blew up in their face. A lot of people were upset that Kennedy Center got money. Kennedy Center, I'm sure, is a good thing, but I don't believe it's on the top of my list of things to be worried about when it comes to coronavirus. So we're going to push back hard in phase 4 to keep it clean. Melissa, how do you feel about the General Flynn news? What would you do? Great. Good question. I'm all over this. Our committee is getting information from the Justice Department. A lot of stuff's being declassified. I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice, but I think you had overzealous prosecutors and investigators in the General Flynn case. I know him. I've met him several times in Afghanistan, and just stay tuned. I think you're going to find some news about General Flynn. I think in many ways he was a victim of an out-of-control system, but I'll leave that up to DOJ. They'll be the final word on it. But what I see and what I am finding during my investigation of the whole debacle around the FISA warrant and the investigation of General Flynn, it should be disturbing to every American. I promise you, more is coming. Just stay tuned. Murdoch, can the aliens at Area 51 get yeah, I think they can. The last one I talked to was very worried about this, but he got away, so who the hell knows? All right. So, Randy, can the Senate investigate the House for abuse of power? No, not really. I don't think we investigate the House as an institution, but we can certainly use our tools of investigating abuse of power, but calling members of the House, the Senate's probably not going to happen. That violates separation of powers. But they seem to be fixated on all things Trump, not so much all things China or all things recovery here. This new panel to look into the COVID-19 smells of partisan politics to me. And there's plenty of time to look back. Let's get through this thing. But in the middle of the pandemic, the House took time to pass yet another House investigation of President Trump. And to me, I think the public's ready to look forward, not backward. Okay, Vicki, masks and gloves are very expensive now. How do we fix this? More supply. In supply demand, there's a shortage of gloves and masks and protective equipment. We're just going to, the Defense Production Act has been used by the president to accelerate some of the production. But the only way we're going to break this cycle is to have the volumes we need so that people don't hoard and feel like they can gouge somebody. Every U.S. Attorney's Office in the nation has somebody in charge of price gouging. And if you know of a circumstance where people are being gouged, mask or gloves or anything else, you can call us and we'll let the U.S. Attorney know. But we're going to shortage of supply, and that drives up the cost. Sean, should I drink disinfectant? No. Don't drink it. Don't rub it on you. Just put it on the table, follow the directions. Dylan from West Columbia, where do you stand on mental health benefits? I've been consistent on this. Most insurance policies years ago denied coverage for mental health. If you know anything about mental health, it's just like any other illness. You can break your leg, but you also, you can have mental health issues that are very real. But for the grace of God, go I. And we have, for years now, mandated mental health benefits to be part of insurance coverage. Senator Domenici, former Senator Domenici from New Mexico, was a big advocate for that. And I think one of the things we're going to see coming out of this, there are going to be some mental health issues related to the stress caused by this virus. And to our mental health workers, you're heroes just as much as any other doctor or nurse. Couple more here. Joe, when the economy reopens, will people go back to work at getting paid more on unemployment? That's a really good question. So what have we learned? If you pay somebody $23 an hour not to work, they're going to take you up on it. It doesn't mean people are lazy. They're not. But you've got a situation in the law. And how did this happen? I wanted to make you whole if you got laid off, no fault of your own. Let's say you make $15 an hour, that's $600 a week. I wanted to pay you the difference between $324, which is the state unemployment benefit, and $600. We were told the computers couldn't do that, so we wound up giving everybody in the country $600 on top of the state benefit. That averages out about the $23 an hour. So you got plenty of people working restaurants and hotels that make 17, 18, 19, 20 bucks an hour. They're making more being unemployed. We got to fix that. This benefit runs out July the 31st, but between now and July 31st, you're creating a problem. For restaurants ready to open up or hotels about to open up, their workforce is making $23 an hour. It creates a lot of tension between employers and employees. But the law in South Carolina is if you've been offered a job, then unemployment stops. So more and more employers are sending out notices to employees that the furlough is over. And South Carolinians are hardworking people. I don't blame them. I blame the Congress for creating this problem, and the Congress needs to fix it. But I'm hearing from employers all over the state that they're having a hard time bringing their workforce back and hiring new people because the unemployment benefits are $23 an hour. Billy, bring textiles. What does that say? Bring textiles and steel back to the U.S. Yeah, we're doing a pretty good job of that on the steel side. These steel tariffs have put the steel community back in business. On Georgetown Steel and a few others were back in business. China dumped in 1 year more steel than the entire world used to try to drive people out of the marketplace. China dumping of steel really hurt the steel industry worldwide. When it comes to textiles, the supply chain has moved, cheaper wages in China, but the textile industry is still alive in South Carolina and throughout the South particularly. And I see the medical supply chain coming back to the United States. Milligan, as I said before, textile industry said that they can produce gowns here made in America. We don't have to rely on the Chinese. They're competing with Vietnam, and I hope Milligan wins. So South Carolina is well positioned, I think, on the textile side to be part of the medical supply chain. And President Trump's pushing back against China's cheating has given the steel industry a new lease on life. Good question. Debbie, get tough on China. Debbie, if we don't, nobody to blame but ourselves. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I don't know what happens when it's the third time. This is the third pandemic coming out of China. We've learned that the supply chain is dominant in China when it comes to medicine. 90% of all the compounds going into antibodies are made in China. That is not a healthy thing for us. Our PPE, our protective equipment for our doctors and nurses, and who've been real heroes here, way too dependent on China. And if we don't hold China accountable, shame on us. This virus came out of China. The Chinese government knew about it. They withheld information from the world. And we got over 26 million Americans out of work and close to 60,000 dead because of China. The bad guy in this horror movie called the coronavirus is China, the Chinese Communist Party. And I'm going to do my part to be tough. Arthur, if bosses call employees back to work and they'd prefer to collect unemployment, can we cut them off? The answer is yes. Once the employer tells the employee your job is now available, unemployment benefits end. And that makes sense. The goal is to help people out of work at no fault of their own, to get you through tough times. I wanted to make you whole but not pay you more. That was an aberration. But under South Carolina law, when the employer says your job is now available to you, the benefits end, and I hope the state, I'm sure they will push hard to enforce that. The goal is to help you when you're out of work. When you get your job back, when it's available to you, you need to go back to work. Couple more. Sean put a massive re-election sign in my yard in Orangeburg. Okay, man. I don't know where your yard's at, but we'll take you up on that. You know, it's funny. A bumper sticker is worth, they say, like $500, probably more than that. But a yard sign, when somebody puts a yard sign up in your yard, that's the ultimate validation of the campaign, in my view. One neighbor telling another, I'm for Lindsey Graham or candidate X. All the money in the world can't buy that. When somebody puts a bumper sticker on the car and puts a yard sign in the yard, that's worth all the money in the world to me, because the goal of an election is to win the election, not just to raise money. And that comes from people believing what you're doing. So the fact that you'd be willing to put a yard sign up in your yard in Orangeburg, for me, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Renee, please get our medicines made in USA. Can't agree with you more. There's a couple of pharmaceutical manufacturers in South Carolina that could maybe get into the antibiotic compounding business. But America needs to do some soul searching here. How did we let the supply chain get away? I'm sure it's always cheaper to do business in China, but it's not wiser to do business in China, particularly with something this important. So I see and hear from Democrats and Republicans a desire to bring the medical supply chain back to America. Senator Cotton has legislation, a bunch of people do, and I feel pretty comfortable that through incentives, we're going to get people to bring the supply chain back, and sometimes sticks. If we don't do that, shame on us, but I feel good that we will. Amber, we're going to shut down again in the fall. I hope not. So here's what I think is going to happen in the fall. Viruses like this do reemerge, the flu will come back. So, and the flu, we've learned to live with it. People die from the flu, particularly older people. But we are able to conduct our lives because we have a vaccine and we build up antibodies and we're able to go about our lives. We don't have a vaccine for the coronavirus and we don't have any drug therapies that will lessen the effect on the human body. When we get those drug therapies and people are more confident they're not going to die if they get it, then we can get back to work. In the fall, when it comes back, I think we'll have drug therapies that we don't have today that will lessen the effect on the human body. You won't need to go to the hospital in such large numbers. A vaccine should be on the horizon. And I feel like we'll have more protective equipment. We'll have beginning to resupply the PPE equipment. And the ventilators are in good shape. So if it does come back in the fall, I think we're going to be much more prepared. And that's what Dr. Fauci says, and I trust him, and I think that makes sense to me. So when it comes back in the fall, we're going to be much more prepared than we were when it first started. Let's do two more. Sherry, I heard illegal immigrants will get stimulus checks. Is this true? No. Not supposed to. If they do, they're breaking the law. Not meant for illegal immigrants. James, thank you, Senator Graham, for all your support and hard work serving the United States in the United States Senate. My wife and I appreciate you. Well, James, thank you. You know, that means a lot. I can take criticism. It's a great country, you know, and you can, you know, yell at your politicians, and that's part of the job. But I'm trying hard. I know we all are. I make my fair share of mistakes, but I love the job. I think I have some ability to help my state and the nation. I'm going to continue to do it if people keep me around. These are tough times. The bad guys are not here at home. It's not Republicans or Democrats. It really is the Chinese Communist Party. We'll be a stronger nation. There's going to be a lot of heartbreak. People are going to lose their loved ones, and there's no replacing that. But I think when this is over, James, we're going to be a much more self-reliant nation when it comes to drugs and protective equipment. That we're going to have testing capability that we don't have today. And if there is another pandemic, and there could very well be, we'll be much better prepared. The thing about America that I like most is that we're generally a very optimistic group of people. We complain a lot like everybody else, but America always is a half full, not half empty country. And my time in politics, I've enjoyed it very much, but I try to keep a half full approach to my job and to life in general. Thank you all very much. Be safe, and I'll stay in touch. We're going back to work Monday, and we'll do another one of these. It's been fun. God bless.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. If you'd like any more information, to make a contribution, or to get involved in our campaign, please visit lindseygraham.com. You can find all pertinent information there. Thanks again for joining us. We will be doing this soon. Have a good evening.